So I've been waiting for this. It's time to go over the number one BWL clear. Who did it first? That's the question whenever new content comes out. And I know it's a little silly, yada yada yada, 20-year-old game, that kind of stuff. The reality is, sure, none of this is super difficult, but someone had to do it first, right? And other people had to fail in order for that first group to be the best. So I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive in looking at why Bricked got the repeat. They were the first people to clear Molten Core. They were now the first people to clear BWL. Where's the competition? Why did they fail? What went wrong? What are these guys doing that's just that step above everyone else to get the back-to-back? So I'm going to break it down into a couple different parts. The first part here being the start. Getting in the instance is huge. So you're going to see here Grassy leaks their positioning in his VOD. Little bit secret here. My understanding is that they did a lot of layer swaps around. If you watch other versions of the day one experience of getting to the raid, lots of people didn't have this. There's a lot of prep that goes into getting stepped up like this. You see he's got the rocket cluster and the fire resist buffs, so those are things that take time, and if you were to die right here you wouldn't have those and you'd be significantly hurt in this Race to World First clear. So making sure that your characters survive to get in the instance and start directly on time is one of the most important parts. And it's all about prep, right? It's about doing things before the 20-minute clear. Like I said, 20 minutes ends up being how long it takes for this raid to be done. So it's those hours and days that lead up to the 20 minutes that make the biggest difference in why these guys were number one. So lots of people meme on the amount of preparation that they did, and I think that's a little silly. It kind of feels like you're in high school when you make fun of that guy for getting an A because he studied. And it's like, okay, well, we're all in school, and if you want to be proud of how well you did for not putting in much effort, good for you, but that's high school, right? Like, those people that care about that in high school, they don't go on to college. They get middling jobs and they're done forever, whereas those guys that studied in high school went into college and now they're astrophysicists. And obviously I'm being kind of silly and over the top with my explanation of this, but yeah, these guys that actually cared about putting in the prep and are really committed to it, it pays off. Whereas some other people who probably put pretty close in terms of the overall amount of time, or you know, they care just as much, when they lose, then they say, oh, you know, it's cringe that those other guys put in so much effort and that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, you still showed up at the exact same time. It just doesn't make sense. It's like, oh, why did you train for this race? Didn't you know you were supposed to just not train? You're supposed to eat Cheetos for the last 2 weeks, and then we were not supposed to see the race course. We weren't supposed to have shoes. You're just supposed to walk it barefoot backwards. And it's like, no, I think this makes more sense. This group were the fastest to clear it. They practiced. They knew the mechanics of the instance going into it. This is just the same version of the game that has been previously released. There weren't any, you know, sudden changes or stuff like that. It's BWL. So what did these guys do? On the other version of the game that has BWL active, they just played the game. Like, I don't understand why they're getting so much hate for that. Oh, they PTR'd. Oh, they PTR'd 5 days a week. No, they did like 1 or 2 BWLs a week for the last couple weeks. I was in one of them and I wiped them. Like, there were guys that they didn't know what BWL was a couple weeks ago, and you just go and play the game and you learn how to do BWL and then you clear it. It's very strange to me the way that some of these raids have been coping about Bricked putting in effort. That to me is just like the weirdest thing ever. Like, you guys all put in effort. You're just sad and coping that you weren't better. So why were these guys better? We talked about getting into the instance. Now let's talk about the second part here. So part 2 of BWL is Veil. this first part, total waste, doesn't really matter. Again, it's just about, did you get into the instance when everyone else got into the instance? Veil is where things start to be separated between the people that know what they're doing and the people that don't. First thing here, you're going to see how people are not using big cooldowns on this first boss. Grassy had Death Wish and Wreck available. He doesn't cast it. Why? Because you need to have it available for this next boss. So there starts to be these just little like knowledge-based things where you need to just be aware of your cooldowns. Cooldown management is one of the most important aspects of a race like this that is so short, all to being 20 minutes. Those couple times that you need to have potion cooldowns available are critical. So you see how no one pulled threat. That's another main big factor here. Speaking to Deathwish though, you see how poor a lot of them are casting it. It's not like that this is a perfect raid by any means. If these guys were on top of it, they all would have popped Deathwish right then. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Grassy popped Deathwish super late there. He doesn't know what he's doing. Some of these guys are being brought on a little bit, right? It's not like everyone in this group is a rank 1 player. You need to fill a raid with 40 people. So some of these guys, Kala, I think he might be a newer warrior. They may have not done BW a whole ton, and they're still getting dragged along to this first clear. It's not like that this run here was perfectly PTR'd and they practiced everything to, this utmost level. You have warriors here that are just figuring out about their Deathwish spell on Veil. Like, this isn't perfect Zerpy. I think he's a newer warrior also. These guys are still learning the game. It's not like that, oh, these guys have been private server players for 20 years. No, that's not true. So Veil and post-Veil trash is the second main part here. You see that they're doing the skip. They're using an invisibility potion to go past all this trash. We're going to look at some later runs that failed here because they accidentally got too close to that fire that hit people and broke the invisibility on some of the players of the raid. So in this raid that doesn't happen. The word to describe the bricked run is clean. Nothing really went wrong in the entirety of the run. It all went according to plan. So could it have gone better? Yeah, but in general, they went in with a list of things that had to get done, and all those boxes got checked. So as we move forward here, Brood and the suppression room area is kind of like part 3 of the raid. And Brood didn't go super great. The rogues had a little bit of a rough time through suppression room. Could have been faster. 5 Sunders Please was ahead of this raid at this point. 5 Sunders Please started Broodlord with the debuff that causes higher damage output, whereas 5 Sunders Please, you see here, they did not. So at this point, 5 Sunders Please is behind. So where do they make up their time? Or sorry, Bricked is behind 5 Sunders Please. 5 Sunders Please is currently in the lead. And Brood goes well. Great. So the big thing that's going to separate Bricked from 5 Sunders Please is this next part of the raid here. First of all, this was super clean. They don't have a mage. Every other group that did BWL, I don't know of a single group that didn't have a mage besides Bricked, like Prog or just in BWL. They went against the meta here and it paid off for them. They don't need a mage. They just are able to put out higher damage by not having one with another warrior. And I mean, maybe there slight thing you could worry about mage call on Neff. They don't have to worry about that. Anyways, though, really clean fire maw here. They just tank it in its standard spot. They lose a little bit of time here to the patrol. So run could have been faster. I mean, it's pretty perfect, but not perfect. Like 10 seconds. You ideally want to be running into it rather than have it wait and run into you. but they don't need to run out or anything. They just blast it down, and then they do the skip here where they run right up the middle. They get to this middle spot, and then they're all going to use their invis potion. Okay, so actually they're being extra safe here. So they run down the middle. They do their tech. Rogue dies. And then they move on. So I think that is kind of interesting to note how later on they're just like, I don't think CBT ever comes back, right? They're just down a player or two because of the tech required for this run. Yeah, they've lost a couple people at this point because of the tech that you're going to continue to see. So this is part 4 now. We're in part 4 here, techies. Well, in Brick's run, they just don't really fight techies that much. They are able to move around and skip everything because of the different tech that they're doing here. So now they pop their invisibility potion right before going around the corner. Not a single person messes it up, and now they're into the end. So at this point, it's just a couple loot pinatas and the raid's over. There's a little bit more tech to come here, but that's essentially the gist of it. So there's just those couple moments where things can go right or they can go wrong, and for Bricked, everything went right. So kill Evanrock, then they kill Flamegore. Pretty standard stuff. It's just kind of loot pinata bosses at this point. They do a skip here, so they don't have to kill those Wormkins. They have a rogue run by them. This had confused me though. I'm very curious to know Forbet's position of this, because for me, I would love to see his viewpoint. For me, it looks like Forbet is the one that does the pull here. He does the pull, and then I guess he vanishes and does like a Giga Vanish, or because I don't ever see him die here. He never dies, doesn't have a soul stone, and he's somehow able to be in on this fight again. Very interesting to know the tech behind that, how he's able to pull that off. But that's essentially the run. They skip a couple packs and they just move faster than everyone else. It's really not that much tech or anything, right? So let's look a little bit more here at their gear. I'm looking at their logs now, that kind of stuff. This was another question mark to me. I didn't really understand what happened with Quasic if he like DC'd. He was the one death of the run. I think he just got like left behind and died to a ability that wasn't cleansed off of him, or poison that wasn't removed from Chromag. Anyways, that to me is still kind of a question mark. But yeah, in general, just want to talk about gear levels. So they've been running multiple molten cores. You're going to see almost every single melee player has a raid weapon at this point. So Rogue has Viscag or daggers. The one exception to that is Forbet having Dalrens. He does have a Curia though, so maybe he held off for that, and that's kind of a nice trade-off right there. But again, if you look through all these warriors here, Viscag, you're going to see a couple of the AV PvP weapons, but it's going to be mostly Viscags and Brute Blades, Viscag, Brute Blade, Brute Blade, Dalrens. So there's Ken's with the Dalrens still, but he's got a QSR, so that does make up for a little bit. PvP weapons, Dalrens, Deathbringer, Brute Blade, PvP weapons, Dagger, Corehound Tooth, Dalrens, Brute Blade, Iron Foe. So they don't have a single ED in this raid group. They only have a couple cop bands. I was kind of surprised to see the limited amount of healer gear that's dropped. Seems like not too lucky on that front. I do see one Fang of the Mystics there when it comes to world boss loot, but not a whole ton. No cacks that I can see. A little bit lacking in terms of gear. I think I even saw, where was it? I found the rat. Rex doesn't even have Lionheart helm. This dude's full rat. So, rocking the Veracity Mask of the Unforgiven there. A little bit ratty, but you know, they got it done, and I think that kind of says a lot. If you look at the amount of damage that they did to techies and the skip before Veil or right after Veil compared to everyone else, very few groups in this top 10 did a whole ton of skipping. I mean, lots of did 1 or 2 skips, but there was only 3 or 4 groups that skipped to that same level as Bricked. So I'm going to do a little bit of a follow-up video talking about some of the other runs and that kind of stuff now, but I think that this will hopefully give you just a little bit of an idea on what the first run was like. No mage, 3 paladin, 6 priest, 1 druid, all warriors, 1 hunter puller, kind of standard stuff. Pretty interesting to look at. Looking forward to doing more of this kind of stuff. If you guys have any comments, stuff that you want me to look into more, definitely say so, because I am interested in talking about it. So anyways, GG's.